Good morning, or almost afternoon, everyone. I'm Claire. I'm the Beyond Tech Team's track lead, and today you're going to hear from Dominic Price, who describes himself as a recovering chartered accountant. Today, he's Atlassian's work futurist, and today he's going to ask you to open your minds to new ways of working together with your team. Please welcome Dominic Price.
Good morning. How you all doing? How are you enjoying Vegas? It's just like a pretend world, isn't it? It's great, but it's weird. I'm going to share 15 minutes of stories with you, and I'm going to try and keep this as practical as possible. And that's because I think you're all smart enough to know the theory on this. I want you to find a way of taking action. And the philosophy I'm going to share with you today is around unlearning first to transform next. Just by show of hands, anyone working in a company that's going through some level of transformation right now? I so wish I'd trademarked that word a few years ago. Transformation, collaboration, and innovation, I could retire right now and I wouldn't have to do this. But we're going to talk about how you need to unlearn first so you can transform second. And just as a reminder, the whole premise of this is around unleashing the potential in your teams. But actually what I want to talk to you about today is not just your teams. I know it's the general theme of everything you hear from Atlassian, but I also want to remind you that there's a you in team, and there's also a company that you work for, and it's the composite of those things that I want to talk to you about. So when we think about this, we often just focus on the team and we forget about you as the individual. So I'm going to share you some stuff that I've practiced along the way to help me as a leader. Then how you can build a great team, a high-performing and effective team around you, and then how you can impact your organization. This is probably the toughest part. Most people feel that they can impact themselves and they can impact the team around them, but they just have to accept the organization they're in. And I'm going to give you something today that can help you start to evolve and transform your organization. So there's a reason I'm really passionate about this. It's because apparently we're in the middle of Industry 4.0, the new industrial revolution. Now, I don't know how we know we're in the middle of it because we don't know when it's going to finish. But let's just say that we're in the middle of a change. A large amount of change is occurring. And in seeing this change, and in my role, I get to visit organizations of all shapes and sizes around the world, I've got to see some common themes of the challenges they're experiencing. So if you basically assume the word transformation is a painful buzzword, and you say, what are the real challenges an organization's having? It's often these things. Increased competition. For me, probably the most recent industry that's faced competition is the financial services and insurance industries that historically were quite well protected, but suddenly fintech has come along and people are banking and running their finances in a very different way. The fact that disruption is now commonplace. Every industry and every organization is going through some kind of disruption. The fact that not only do your customers expect a faster pace of innovation, but your employees do as well. And if you can't give them that, they will go and join the organization that does allow them to be the best version of themselves and be innovative, and do so without bureaucracy. The fact that customer expectations are increasing every single day. For me, I experienced this recently. I landed in Zurich. I don't speak the local language and I didn't have the local currency. But to get to my hotel was really easy. Just got my phone out, pressed a button, uploaded Uber, and I was able to get a journey with high confidence on when I'd arrive. They picked me up within 3 minutes of when they'd promised, and I didn't have to get my card out to pay. Awesome experience. The following week, I landed back in Sydney, and I'd ordered something online. And the local postal service told me the day that it might arrive. How can Uber transport a 120-kilo package, that's me, within 3 minutes accuracy for a fair price, and the postal service can't transport a small package? Now, they're not even in the same industry. That's a really unfair comparison. But our expectations now are based on our best experience that we had, not just the industry that they're in. Always on is this challenge of mobile phones and technology. How do we learn the discipline that just because we can be online 24/7 doesn't mean we should be online 24/7? And we're already seeing legislation there. In France, they've actually banned companies sending emails at the weekend. Now, I'm not a massive fan of that because sometimes I like to work on the weekend and I take a bit of time out during the week. So how do we understand always on the discipline and the flexibility? For us in Atlassian, and I know from chatting to many of our customers, the idea of distributed teams, what often feels like a tax but actually you believe is an investment, is how do you manage across borders? Not just the time zones, but the different cultures, customs, habits, and rituals. And then finally, partnerships. How do you actually have relationships with providers, whereas back in the day you'd have a contract with a vendor and you'd manage that by a legal team? How do you instead have relationships with providers and suppliers so that you're mutually beneficial? Now, when we look at all these things, what we land back on is this formula for teamwork. And we landed on a formula for teamwork on purpose. It's because I work with thousands of engineers and they absolutely love formulas. But we also appreciate that you have to get this right not just for teams, but for yourself first. If you're not transforming, it's going to be hard for your team and your organization to transform. So I'm going to give you 3 actions, 3 practical things that I do on a regular basis to actually manage this. So first of all, this is an exercise I learned about 1.5 years ago. I practice it every quarter for myself, and I actually practice it regularly with my team. You get this free of charge. It is called the 4 L's. The first L, what did I love? So at the end of the quarter, I look back at the previous quarter, and I ask myself, what did I love about what I did and how I contributed in that quarter? Not like, love. The thing that is probably your superpower, that when you deploy it, you inspire the people around you. And that's the thing you should do more of. The next 2 actually come together, longed for and loathed. These are a formula. I look back at the quarter and I'm like, what did I wish I could have done? What did I long for? What did I really miss out on? And I want to add this thing in. But I don't allow myself to add it in. Because like you, I believe that I'm already full. I don't want any more working hours, and I haven't got the cognitive load to just do more. So I'm only allowed to add in a longed for if I take out a loathed. And then the last thing is, what did I learn in the last quarter? And this is the gift that keeps on giving. Because every quarter when I do this, I've added in a longed for the previous quarter, and it won't be a surprise to most of you, but about 50% of those longed fors, when I add them in, I get them wrong. I fail at them. They don't often go as planned. But in learning from that, I share that lesson learned with the people around me, peer to peer, so we all benefit. I want to give you a quick example of how powerful this can be. About 3 quarters ago, I was sat there and I longed to do more coaching and mentoring. I just absolutely love coaching and mentoring people in our business and some people outside the business. But I wasn't doing much of it because my calendar was full to the brim of meetings. Now, just to check if there's any narcissists in the room, does anyone love meetings? One, that I want to chat to you later and find out how you love them. Now, I'm not a massive fan of meetings, but at this time I loathed them because they were dominating my day, my week, my month, my year. They were dominating my rhythm and cadence. And so what I did was I worked with one of our tech guys, and he developed a script for me. And we sent out that script. We canceled every meeting in my calendar. And it said, either this is a boomerang or a stick. Sticks don't come back, boomerangs do. So the stick meetings, that was when people, when we declined them, they were like, yeah, there's no need for you to be there. So they never came back. The boomerangs, the meetings that I was required in, came back, and I asked them, what is my role in this meeting? What's the purpose of the meeting? And what velocity do we have? How do we know when we're making progress? So not only did I reduce the number of meetings I was in, the ones that came back, I suddenly realized that I'd been playing completely the wrong role in them, because I was just assuming a role that wasn't the real role that they wanted me to play. Also, it saved about 2/3 of the meetings, which I then got to reinvest in something way more valuable. Interestingly, about 2 months afterwards, a whole lot of people contacted me and said, when you declined the meeting, we continued with it for a few weeks, and then we asked ourselves, why is this meeting occurring? And we realized it was just occurring because it used to occur. The number of recurring meetings that dominate your calendar and take your precious time. Your time is probably the hardest commodity that you've got available, so make sure you use it wisely. So for you, try something like the 4 L's exercise. so that you can be the best version of yourself for your teams. When you then get to your teams, and you can also do the 4Ls exercise with them, the thing that we use internally at Atlassian, and literally hundreds of thousands of organizations around the world use, is our Atlassian team playbook. Now, this isn't marketing material, thought leadership, or some kind of quirky best practice. I do not confess to know what is best for you. This is a set of practices that we use internally at Atlassian, and we decided if it was good enough for good enough for us, it was good enough for you. And so a few years ago, we decided to share it externally. In doing so, we actually retired our internal version of the playbook, and the teams at Atlassian, literally we have over 400 teams across the Atlassian globe, use this every single day and week to manage the way they work. Nothing to do with technology, just sitting around a table, human to human, and having a conversation about how you work together. And I'm seeing more and more organizations release material talking about new ways of working. This is all about finding new ways of working. The team playbook's designed as something that is self-service, so it doesn't take a team of people to roll it out. You don't need a program. You don't need an initiative. It's there for you to use free of charge. And it's a very simple concept. Essentially, we've built 3 health monitors. These are things to assess as a team how you work together. It's basically shining a mirror in front of the team. If you're into sports, this is a fitness instructor putting you through some drills. Now, we don't want teams to become depressed when they assess themselves and they find out they're struggling in a few areas. So we've complemented those with over 40 plays. If you're in the keynote this morning, you would have heard Scott mention we've just released 8 new plays for IT teams. The way these plays work is they are about 80% baked. It's a recipe card of how to make a great team. What it requires is you to personalize it to your environment, to your situation, and your context. My ask of you is to give it a try. If you go to the AtlassianTeamPlaybook.com website, all the resources are on there. And if you're a Confluence customer, all the templates that we use internally, we've also shipped into the marketplace, so you get access to all of our templates as well. Find a way of sitting down with your team and just listening to them. When you go through a health monitor, you will learn infinitely more than any sort of vital signs survey or any pulse check on engagement by getting your team in a room and listening to them. And finally, your company. I mentioned that I believe this is the hardest thing to impact, but I also believe it is something you can impact. The reason I think it's the hardest thing to impact is most organizations look and feel like this. Whatever HRIS system you use, whether it be Workday or one of the others, it is predisposed to look at the organization chart by function, and therefore we often hear the word silo. I identify strongly with my function, but it's hard to work across the business. I was fortunate enough to do an event last year with Patty McCord from Netflix, who built the Netflix culture deck. And she told a story where she said, if you ever started with a customer problem or opportunity, you would never, ever build the org chart. And it's kind of true. If you ever think of an incident or any form of work where you have a heightened sense of urgency, you get a cross-functional group of people together, you just work together seamlessly, and everything goes fine. When you've got that burning platform, you're awesome. All egos are left at the door. And then the next day, you return to your function, you're like, I'm never talking to Bob again. He's from finance, and finance are all idiots. So how do we deconstruct this org chart? Well, our belief is that the team, this cross-functional team, is important. But to understand the way work occurs, you have to appreciate that even in autonomous teams, you still have this connective tissue. You have what we call a network of teams that come together to ship awesome experiences. And so there's something you can do to impact your organization. And it's brave and it's bold, and it requires you to be open. So the challenge for you to impact your organization is for you to be a role model. And what you do is next time you've got a half-baked idea, maybe even a third-baked, I want you to share that plan with another team. Get their feedback, get their constructive criticism, have that conversation. And by you role modeling that behavior, you'll set the tone in your organization that sharing early, that sparring and collaborating is a healthy thing to do, And you will be the role model that determines how your organization culture evolves through that transformation. So often when I talk about these three things, people regularly sit there and think like, I wonder whose job that is. Is it like a HR thing? Maybe it's like a file, I don't know who does that. If you want to know how to get there, it's really simple. It's you. You are a role model to probably 20, 30, maybe even 100 people in your organization, whether you know it or not. It's very rare that anyone taps you on the shoulder and says, I'm role modeling your behavior right now. They pick you, you don't pick them. So my challenge to you is that if you want to unleash your team's potential, first of all, you've got to transform yourself. Then you've got to sit and listen to your team and understand the areas where you're healthy and where you're strong and where you're struggling and where you can improve. And then you need to be a role model in your organization by sharing context early and being brave, bold, and open with your ideas. And when you do that, I guarantee you, as I've seen in organizations of all shapes and sizes, you will not only unleash your team's potential and your company's potential, but you'll get to be the best version of yourself every single day. So unlearn first and transform second. Thank you very much.